quiet. But first, we start off with the crypto nightmare before Christmas. It is complete carnage across the space. At one point, Coinbase suspending trading. The sell-off is holding no prisoners. Everything from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ethereum, all getting slammed. Bitcoin is down more than 30% from its highs, but making a bit of a comeback from the lows in today's session. And crypto stocks taking on the chin as well. Square, Overstock, the CME, even Riot Blockchain getting crushed after their big runs. While longtime Bitcoin investors are used to this volatility, this is the first time many new Bitcoin believers are feeling the crunch since piling in. So how long does this last? Does it spread to other parts of the market? Will these newbie investors be scared off for good, Dan?
Yeah, listen, this is not a bad thing, especially if this whole crypto thing is going to have some legs here. Obviously, you know, from October to late November, Bitcoin doubled. It went from 5 to 10,000, and then it doubled from 10,000 to 20,000 in less than a month. So the fact that we had this 30% pullback, it felt like a bit like a panic. It was in all the altcoins. You had some system problems like you're talking about, a lot of really bad headlines. Our Twitter feeds were taken over by crypto over the last 48 hours here, and I think that's really important to remember that this is just one asset class. It did not go into other asset classes. And let me tell you the other thing. I know a lot of people who've been on this train, and I have not. I'm just a tourist when it comes to it. I'm trading, I'm gambling, like most of you on my Coinbase iPhone sort of thing. It's taken over my iPhone. But people were waiting for this pullback. And that's why it bounced off of the lows today. And that's why we might have put in a short-term bottom.
If this were a stock and we pulled the chart up, how would you interpret it?
I thought it traded, if it were a stock, that's a great question.
And then the question is, and it's not, and so how do you interpret the chart?
But let's pretend that it is for a second. I'll play that game with you. I say, you know what, actually, if you were looking for an opportunity, today might have been a day. I heard BK on with you during the power lunch, and he talked about exactly that. He bought it a couple times today. So effectively, it traded rather well, given everything that happened and given everything we just talked about. In terms of stocks affected, you know, Steve's been on this, and we gave him kudos on Tuesday. Overstock was at 20 handle or low 30 handle when he started talking about it. But on Tuesday, we flagged it and said, look at the price action today. Traded up to 82.70, all-time high, closed lower on the day on huge volume. We said, good opportunity to pull the ripcord. Turned out that was right in the short term. I still think there's some downside there. On the other hand is CME, by the way, which is not a crypto stock. And I think sell-offs in CME should be bought.
You know, when you get, Dan opened up the show, when you see this ratcheting higher in the stock price, the person that buys it last is the weakest hands. They always say it gets out of the weak hands. But you had a lot of millionaires on paper made from that, the ratcheting up in price, and they want to make sure.
On Bitcoin itself or
on Bitcoin itself?
Okay.
On Bitcoin itself. So you want to make sure that you become a millionaire in reality versus on paper when you see your position go from X to 10 times X or 100 times X. So, well, in Bitcoin, everything, discipline leaves because no one was staying long that long forever. But you get people just put the pressure on it. Countries, regulation comes on. So you saw the Russian headline that they're going to start regulating it. Maybe you have oligarch selling this. Maybe you have people that were last in selling it. Maybe you have chunky sellers in here that can't sell as much as they would like to, but they have to put pressure on it. I do think it bled out to the overall market. I think it was a risk-off trade in the overall market. But Guy brought over Overstock. ICO, initial coin offering, is what Overstock offers with T0. So it's blockchain. It's a different element. But I think that the true weakness in financials is that financials were believers in blockchain ultimately in the future as well, and they sold off that element. I think they will buy it back. I think this was a buying opportunity.
I think the way it traded today was excellent. I mean, the way it ended the day, and I say I agree with Guy. I looked at it as a huge win for cryptocurrencies in general, especially the sort of the most prevalent ones. So I do think it bled into the market a little bit, especially names like AMD. I mean, you saw it, you know, hit AMD, you saw it hit in the video a little bit. And anything that had this like garbage biased with it, or sort of like the buzzwords of AI, blockchain, what have you, that's not a real company. I'd say this, what's really important in this market when you look at and let's talk, we could talk crypto or we could talk, you know, AI blockchain. A blockchain company, we know it's going to be a very, very prevalent technology. What we don't know is sort of the wide stream, the real open-ended sort of value here and what companies are going to be around. You got to bet on management teams. You have to find management teams that you trust and that have turned around and built companies in technology businesses they're the ones that are likely to be successful.
Well, here's the thing. I think there was also a very big fundamental shift that happened as far as the currencies were concerned this week when Charlie Lee, the founder of Litecoin, sold his entire stake, told why he was doing it. I think that gave a lot of those people, the HODL people, that who just are never going to sell, made them think twice about it. To Steve's point, is like, okay, it's great to maybe be a billionaire or a millionaire on paper, but let's figure out actually how to really become a millionaire or a billionaire. And so I think that changed the mindset of a lot of people who are holding for dear life.
Well, as you all know, on this show, we've talked to a lot of people who are big Bitcoin believers. They built businesses on Bitcoins. Well, one of the more surprising developments that actually happened today, Mike Novogratz, who we had on the show a couple times, he called for Bitcoin 8,000, and he scrapped his plans to bring out his crypto hedge fund. Quite a flip from what he told us just last week. Take a listen. So right now, you're planning to launch your fund next year, in early next year or so?
End of the week.
The end of the week. Yeah. Did you move that up?
Really? No. We had. Listen, launching a fund is always challenging. I wish we had launched it 3 months ago.
Sure.
Because it would have been much easier investing. And so at one point you just start. And so we're going to start, and we'll see from there.
By the way, we called Mike Novogratz and invited him back on, but he declined. But if you believe these guys on the way up, do you believe these guys when times are tough? He's calling for Bitcoin 8,000, which does not necessarily mean that precludes his call for 40,000 sometime next year.
You can't be dogmatic in other words, if you agreed with him on the way up and agreed with his rationale, just because he might be saying something you don't like to hear, you shouldn't then disagree with him. You can't be dogmatic. He knows a lot. My sense is Mike Novogratz knows more about Bitcoin than 99.5% of the people watching here today, myself included, BK's being the exception. So, again, if you believed his reasons for the way up, you got to believe his reasons for the way down.
You often talk about a 2-day rule. Does that apply to this?
Of course. I think you have to trade, when you said the guy originally trade it like it's a stock, I think you have to trade everything.
3-day rule, excuse me.
Everything like it's a stock. But yeah, it is a 3-day rule. But when you look at what happened with Mike, it's almost when you postpone an IPO. The times aren't right for it. And when you look at Bitcoin, it is like a microwave. It's unbelievable how fast those actions that take a stock years to do.
And then Bitcoin found a bottom for the day.
Right. He's had such an unbelievable call. But now if he takes off this fund and he wants to put a bottom into the stock, the whole thing gets a little convoluted. I don't want to take away from the fact that he's had an amazing call in Bitcoin.
The question on the 3-day rule, though, in a name that, let's say a stock that traded like Bitcoin traded today, or any of these currencies traded today, look at Ripple. Ripple went down to like 69 cents or something like that, closed at $1.10. Bitcoin rallied right back. I look at it and say the 3-day rule does not apply in this scenario. We saw a massive turnaround in these. I think it's very bullish.
Let's just be really clear. He said he thinks Bitcoin itself is going to be range-bound for months between 10,000 and 60,000, and it could go as low as 8,000. And so at the end of the day, this is a guy who's made hundreds of millions of dollars being long Ethereum. Okay, and he's got, he's been trading. He's a momentum trader. He's a macro trader. So I wouldn't take any of his targets and be trading off of that. And listen, you guys, I mean, this may be the mother of all-time tops. That moved up to 19,500 or something. The volume in which it did it. Okay, the market cap at which it did it. So to me, I think that range-bound call is probably a decent call, which is great for traders and it's great for people who've been sick of the stock market at a 9.5 VIX. Okay, with no volatility.
Establishing a base, wouldn't it?
That's right.
If it were a stock. Well, speaking of charts, our next guest says today's crypto crush could actually be your best chance to buy Bitcoin. The chart master, Carter Worth, is over at the Plasma to take a look at the charts. Carter.
Yeah, we're going to look at a little history, but the thing is, we've seen this dozens of times before in the short life that Bitcoin has had. But first, the depressing thing for all of us, and frankly, it is just that. Let's just put this in context. 100 grand since 2011, when Bitcoin basically, over the last 5 years, you got a 3-bagger in Apple, 6 million, 2 in Tesla, 3.7 billion. Now, let's say you didn't risk 100. You said, I'm not going to do that, or that's a lot of money. You risked only 10,000. You'd have 370 million bucks in your pocket. How about if you risked 1,000? 3-4 million bucks. Nothing's like this. Yes, there are all the analogies to the South Sea bubble, to the tulips. There's no rate of change ever in any of the data that is like this. But let's look at the current sell-off. Here is, now this is important. If you do an arithmetic chart, the thing looks like this. You can't even analyze it. But if you do logarithmic, nonlinear, it puts the rate of change in perspective with preceding moves. So if I put the percentages on here we go. Now, what do you see? This is since inception, down 31, down 38, down 93, down 39, down 25, down 70, down 67, 73. So in that context, what makes this different? Now, you could say, yeah, there was just a few people playing here. Now that's big money. Fair enough. But in the context of corrections, there's nothing different per se. And if there were, then how did all these happen? I mean, this is just right in the percent. We have ones that are 93, 73, 67, 70, and this is only 33. So let's look at the here and now chart just to put this in context. This is over the past year. I mean, these are remarkably uniform. 25, 25, 31, 33. And if you were to draw a trend line, for what it's worth, today we checked back almost perfectly, and after being down a lot more, it did close well, and we sort of bounced off this top of the channel. If you're not involved and you've wished you had made billions, take advantage of this and put $1,000 in it, or a little more.
Carter's going to come on over. I'm not going to ask the question because he's just going to come over. Thank you, Karen, for bringing the chair in. All right, Carter. So the last chart that you had was the 2017 chart.
Yes, just we've had four sort of 25. Right. Now, again, you know, you guys, if it were a stock, it's unlike anything else. So there's no way to know. We don't know what valuation is. We've got people who've made a lot of money talking about going down to 8,000. Maybe it's range bound. But the channel sort of lends itself perfectly to what trend work is. And the check back is at a level where...
That's what I was going to ask you. So then is this the perfect thing to use technical analysis for?
It might just be because we certainly can't talk about cash flow. I mean, I know there was fundamentally an argument initially that it should be worth 20% of the total value of gold. There's all sorts of things. But, I mean, who knows what, right? But what we do know is, remarkably, when it was at its low point today, it touched the top of that channel and bounced.
You know, Carter, to Mel's point, you know, one of the things that, as I've been looking at Bitcoin in particular for most of the year, I found it was like a magnet to round numbers. Did you find that in your work? It got stuck at like 4,000.
Remarkably uniform, sort of a lot of symmetry to it. The advances and the pullbacks have sort of ratios in terms of magnitude and duration. And it's remarkable, again, how today's low, and it was looking pretty bad. All of a sudden, here's what you're saying, it starts coming off the low, and it closed very well.
Last question here. Do you wish the chart history were longer, though? I mean, you are...
Yeah, I mean, ideally.
You don't like to look at IPOs, for instance, for that
IPO has no history, right? So, because what pattern interpretation is, if you think, is current price juxtaposed against past price. Just as fundamental is, if someone says they earned X for the quarter, $1, what if the last 10 quarters were 10 cents? It's a good quarter. What if the last 10 quarters were $5 a quarter? Then the dollar's terrible.
But I mean, can you go, if you
5 years is enough. 5 years is enough. Yes, sure.
Even if it doesn't capture Bitcoin at $1.
Well, that's why I had to do the log scale, so you could adjust for that, because
log scale.
I mean, where is
One and only Carter Worth.
He's in that, what is that thing we talk about? The Pantheon or the Parthenon? He's somewhere. No tie, though. Isn't he supposed to wear a tie in the show?
Because he's me on Options Action, which is up next. Carter, thank you. Carter Worth of Cornerstone Macro. All right, time to... Anybody, did you buy Bitcoin or anything?
You know, I bought Bitcoin Cash, and I actually had been selling the Bitcoin. And to me, I think our friend that has been on the show a couple times now, the evangelist for Bitcoin Cash, has made a pretty compelling argument. And BK made a great argument on the show the other day. Faster, cheaper, or something bigger.
He was a buyer, though, of Bitcoin today. Coming up, it is time to take stock of the dogs of the Dow. Will the highest yielding stocks this year be your best bets for next year? We'll tell you the one name traders think could break out. Plus, the retailers are raging ahead of the holiday shopping spree. Just how big of a boom could the Christmas season be? We'll bring you the latest. And later, one auto stock is stalling out this month, but we will tell you why the traders think it's about to kick into overdrive. Much more Fast Money right after this.